What is up, guys? It's Tyler. I'm back with another movie review. I have been on a 2-week hiatus. I'm sorry for that. I went on vacation 2 weeks ago to the beach. It was a family vacation. It was very fun. And I was all ready to do this movie review when I came back from the vacation, but then a few days later, I got sick. So I had to take that time to recover. I am now fully recovered from being sick. So I watched the movies last night and I'm prepared to do uh, this Disney movie review. And as you can see from my background, and if you watched my last video, you know that this is The Lion King, animated versus live action comparison. This is going to be an interesting one for me because the animated Lion King has been my favorite Disney movie as a kid of all time. It stands to this day my favorite classic Disney movie. So I knew this was going to be a very interesting review. I'm probably going to be a little bit more passionate about this one than previous ones. So let's just get right into it. So the first thing to note about comparing the movies is that the live action opening sequence of Circle of Life is basically shot for shot um, the same, which I did appreciate. They didn't mess with it, which is great. Um, the only thing I will say, kind of a minor thing, I mean, the animated one was more visually appealing to me, but that's more of a minor thing. Okay. And then we have a little bit of an add-in scene. Because in the animated after Circle of Life, it jumps to the mouse and scar scene, and I mean so does the one in the live action, but the live action one kind of has more of a scene where it has the mouse running around a little bit more before he gets to Scar. Um, which I mean I'm kind of neutral about it. I mean it doesn't really hurt anything. I don't think it was necessary, but it didn't hurt anything. So I'm not gonna talk too much about that. What I will talk about is the confrontation scene with Scar. Um, when Zazu and Mufasa show up to confront Scar about not being at Simba's presentation. And this had a lot of issues for me in the live action one because comparing it to the animated scene, this scene in the live action one was not as believable. It really was not. It lacked humor, first of all, because yes, Scar is evil, but he's also in the animated one, he's at least charismatic and he's very humorous. Even in this scene, there's a funny little scene where him and Zazu go, back and forth because when Scar says, I quit, and Zazu's like, Scar, don't look at me that way. And, the whole little funny little quip. And then when he says, oh, Zazu, you made me lose my lunch. Like, very humorous type of things. And in the live action scene, the way they delivered these lines was not humorous at all. It was very much more serious and deadpan. And I'm not quite sure why they chose to go that route. I don't think that was a good choice. Because it's supposed to be humorous. I mean, and then when Mufasa shows up, but while we're on the subject of Mufasa, one of the other things I did like about the live action, I did like how they brought in James Earl Jones, who was the voice of Mufasa in the animated. They brought him back for the live action, which I really appreciated that. Great voice actor. And he did a good job in this film. So when Mufasa shows up to confront Scar, it I think the part that stuck out to me the most was the part where Mufasa says, "Don't turn your back on me, Scar," and Scar, does a little, well, perhaps you should turn your back on me. And Mufasa says, "Is that a challenge?" In the live action scene, comparing it to the animated one, it lacked emotion. It lacked oomph. It wasn't believable. Like in the animated one, Mufasa goes, "Is that a challenge?" And in the live action, he just goes, "Is that a challenge?" And I'm like, that's just not as believable. It's not as it makes more sense that Mufasa would be more fiery like he was in the animated one. So this whole scene for me just and it's kind of a theme of the movie. And a lot of people who I've seen talk about the live action version of The Lion King have even mentioned how they do not like how there is a lack of emotion in the animals' faces. I mean, you can see it even in this background picture of me, like Simba being raised up by Rafiki. There's a little bit more of an emotion in his face in the animated than there is in the live action right here. It's kind of a theme in this movie that I'm going to be talking about quite frequently because it shows up. So that's my first little thing about this. This scene didn't hold up quite well for me. Um, Zazu is, I will say, I I don't think they changed Zazu too much. Zazu's okay for me in the live action. He's still humorous. Um, I mean, I liked him better in the animated, but I didn't see a huge big deal with him in the animated in the live action one. So I'm not really gonna touch on that. Okay, the morning scene when Simba wakes up Mufasa because he wants to go out and see the Pride Lands, and Mufasa shows him the Pride Lands. Again, this scene lacked humor. The only humor we got was when Simba pounced on Zazu. I'm talking about in the live action one. In the live action one, it lacked humor because the only humorous thing we got was when Simba pounced on Zazu, which they kept that in, which I like that. But and even in there, even though they did that, it wasn't as funny as in the animated one. And there's more depth to what Mufasa is telling Simba in the animated one. There's more emotion. Again, a lack of emotion in the scene and humor. Um, Now we grew to love in the animated Lion King. So I didn't like how they did this scene either. It was just very dry for me. As you'll see, a lot of this movie was. Then we move on to Simba going to talk to Scar, bragging to Scar about how he's gonna one day rule the Pride Lands. And this scene is one of the biggest scenes that exuberated again the lack of humor in the live action one. Because in the animated one, in this scene, Scar is very humorous about this. He's very sarcastic. He says, well, forgive me for not leaping, forgive me for not leaping with joy. Bad back. That's just a funny, sarcastic line. And then Simba says, when I'm king, what'll that make you? A monkey's uncle. You know, it's just so humorous the way he delivers the lines. And in this scene in the live action, again, there's like little to no humor at all. And that frustrated me. I was like, this is supposed to be kind of funny and sarcastic. And Scar's supposed to be playing it up more. As if he actually loves his nephew, like in the animated when he kind of played it up a little bit. This one, he's just kind of, I don't know, just kind of a jerk. So I that's another scene I did not like. Um, okay, this is actually I think a mistake that they made in the live action movie because um this is where Simba and Nala are walking to they want to go to the elephant graveyard, but the parents make Zazu go with them, so they have to go to the watering hole because Zazu's going with them and they have to lose him. And in the animated one, Zazu, points out that, oh, it's so great to see you two blossoming together. Your parents will be thrilled with you being betrothed and all, goes into how one day they'll be married. And in the live action, I didn't notice this before. He actually says, one day you'll be betrothed and one day you'll be married. And I think that's kind of a mistake because that doesn't make sense that one day you'll be betrothed. Because if they're one day they'll be married, then they would already be betrothed, like the animated one. So I guess I'll chalk that up as a mistake. But I noticed it, and I wish they would have been more careful with that because I don't know, that defies logic. And in this one, they lose Zazu in a different way. um, the birds are blinding him, like the birds are flying all around him, and that's how he gets lost instead of him getting sat on, which I mean, come on. I preferred him getting sat on the animated one. That's more humorous. Again, the lack of humor in this movie is killing me. It really is. And I'm not the only one, because a lot of people have said this about this movie, that the lack of humor and the lack of emotion was just not there. Another change they made in the live action from the animated one that I did not like was in the animated one, when they get to the elephant graveyard, Nala is all for it. I mean, she wants to be there. I mean, she's like, I wonder if it's brains or, something like that. And they go off and they explore and everything. And the live action, Nala is like she's scared of it and she wants to turn around and go back. And I didn't like that. I'm like, well, Nala's supposed to be adventurous like Simba. Like she's not supposed to be scared. I don't know why they made her so scared in this one. I didn't like that. And this brings me to something that really hurts me about this movie. Okay, we're introduced to the hyenas. And let me tell you, in the animated Lion King, the hyenas are one of my favorite parts about the animated. And a lot of people, that's one of their favorite parts about the animated one, is the hyenas. Because of how funny they are and the dynamic that Shinzi, Banzai, and Ed have together, like the dynamic they have. They completely changed that in this movie, and I did not like it. Now, I will say, before I get into what I didn't like, I do like how they did make Shinzi more the leader of the pack. I mean, she was kind of a leader in the animated, but they kind of made it more obvious in this one. And, as a lot of people know, in real life, the female hyena is the leader of the pack. So that's accurate. So I did like that. But what I didn't like was they weren't funny in the live action. They were not funny at all. They sucked the humor. They tried to be funny with Bonsai and Ed, but it wasn't funny. And Shenzi didn't really interact with Bonsai and Ed like she did in the animated one. She was just kind of like the leader and didn't really, and that's one of the things I loved about the animated was her dynamic with Bonsai and Ed. And this brings me to one of my biggest issues with the hyenas in this movie. Ed talking. He's not supposed to talk. There is even there's so many backstories and theories to why Ed doesn't talk in the animated one. So it doesn't make any sense why they would make Ed talk in this movie, given that he didn't talk in the animated one. And like I said, there's a lot of backstories and theories to why he doesn't talk. So that just does not make sense to me. And they tried to make him funny, and he wasn't. He was more funny when he was going. He was more funny like that. Like, what is this? So I didn't like that at all. So, and when Mufasa comes to confront the hyenas for trapping Simba and Nala, it's not as impactful. He just kind of fights them off and then says, "You've been warned." And it's just kind of, again, not like in the animated one where it's much more threatening. If you ever like, it's again, there's a lack of oomph in the live action in this scene, and that's what I missed. Because in the animated one, it's so much more impactful. It's so much more oomph like. So I really, really didn't like how they did that. Okay, and this is one of my. Okay, so now we have the Mufasa and Simba talk. When Mufasa tells Zazu to take Nala home so he can teach his son a lesson. In the animated, it is much more emotional and heartfelt. Like, for example, when Simba tells Mufasa in the animated one, "You're not scared of anything." And Mufasa says, "I was today. Thought I might lose you." And it's so emotional the way he says it. And the live action, he just kind of goes, "Thought I might lose you." Just nonchalantly says it. And I'm like, I mean, you would think that you would be more emotional about potentially losing your son, as in the animated one. So, um, it was completely just dry, and there again was little note. There was even in the humor with the part where it was supposed to be humorous, it really wasn't that humorous. It just, and even Simba didn't really have emotion. I'm talking about Mufasa, but Simba didn't really do a lot of emotional delivery in his voice either. So I don't know. It just didn't do it for me. And then we have the scene where Scar comes to meet the hyenas. Okay, so again, not as impactful, and there's a different relationship between Scar and the hyenas um, in the animated and the live action. In the animated, the hyenas are kind of like Scar's henchmen, and he clearly has a relationship with the hyena, like he has rapport with the hyenas. Um, in the live action, it doesn't seem like he has much of a relationship with them. He just kind of comes in, and I mean, they know of him, but they don't have the same. Like in the animated, they're almost like they revere him, like they respect him in the animated one. Um, they're very friendly with him. They look up to him even. In the live action, they're just kind of, what are you doing here? And he tells them they're gonna kill Mufasa. Oh, and the way he says it is so nonchalant. He goes, "That's why we're gonna kill him." And I'm like, could you say that a little bit more threatening and sinister, like you did in the animated when you said precise? Like, that's the difference I'm talking about. That there's no oomph there. There's no impact. Like it wasn't delivered great. It just it's so weird. And then the hyenas just, I guess, just decide to go along with him in the live action, even though they clearly don't have a previous relationship with him. They decide to go along with it, I guess, because he promises them food. Okay. This leads me to possibly one of my biggest complaints about the live action movie. And I have not really touched on the music yet, but this is the one I cannot pass up. The live action version of Be Prepared is garbage. Absolute garbage. I mean, the animated Be Prepared was so iconic. It was one of the fan favorites, if I remember correctly, from the animated one. A lot of people say it's actually one of their favorite Disney villain songs from the animated one because it was so charismatic. It was fun. It was colorful. It was, jumping from here to there and, all the humor and everything, all the emphasis in his voice. And this one, it's so watered down in the live action, so watered down. He's talking through most of it, not even singing. He sings through some of it, but not. He's mostly talking. They changed the lyrics for some reason, which I don't know why they changed. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I don't understand why he changed the lyrics because it wasn't good. Um, he puts some emphasis in his voice, but not a whole lot. It just makes no sense. It makes no sense. But this Be Prepared was garbage. And I know my friend who's gonna watch this review, she already knows this is gonna be my biggest complaint. So if you're watching this, you saw it coming. And now you people know too. Sorry, I hated that version. Okay. Okay, now there's a slight change in the next scene when Scar leads them into the gorge, the reasoning for going in there. So in the animated, he tells Simba that he has a surprise, or his father has a surprise for him, and to wait on the rock. And in the live action, he tells Simba he brings him into the gorge to work on his roar. Which I mean, I guess. I mean, I don't know if that really matters what the reason was. I mean, he got him into the gorge. That was the main purpose of the scene. So I don't know that that really was hurting the plot at all, but I mean, I don't think it was necessary to change it, but whatever. I'm not really gonna get too much into it because that's minor compared to other things in the movie. Okay, so one of the biggest things I see. So when the stampede starts, the wildebeests come running into the gorge and they're running at Simba. In the animated, his face is like he's terrified. In the live action, he just kind of looks like this. There's no terror on his face. There's no like he's not scared. He looks at it and he starts running. I'm like, you'd be terrified. Like it's just I don't know. Again, that's lack of emotion. Lack of emotion. So that's gonna be a complaint throughout this movie. I'm telling you guys, the emotion is not there. Not like in the animated one. Um, okay. Mufasa's death. In the live action, it's not as emotional as the animated one. It is not as impactful. I will say, I'm not one that cries a lot in movies, but I will say the animated Lion King, the scene that has always made me cry, even to this day, is Mufasa's death. And the live action one did not even make me tear up. It just was not as emotional. It wasn't as impactful. Now, I will say Simba did have some emotion in his voice when he was shouting for help. Yes, I could hear emotion in his voice, and I'll give kudos to Simba for that in the live action. But the rest of it was just it was kind of rushed, and it really didn't wasn't the same impact. And then when Scar comes tell Simba that he needs to run away and never return because he was responsible for um Mufasa's death. In the animated, Scar was at least pretending to be sad, and he was pretending to be emotional, and he was pretending, to be heartbroken and talking to someone in an emotional way. And in this one, he just kind of talks to them rough and fusses at him. Like even in animated, when Scar tells him to run away, he doesn't really fuss at him. He just says it in a dramatic way. And this one, he fusses at him. Like when it traumatized Simba even more. So that even wasn't the same way. I didn't like that. See, again, in the animated one, Scar is at least charismatic and he can at least fake it. He can fake being emotional. This one, he doesn't really fake it. He just kind of a jerk. I don't know. Okay, moving on. Um, okay, so after Simba runs off and the hyenas chase him, they have that all, which again, they took out a humorous scene where Bonsai falls in the thorns. The animated one comes out and spits thorn in his nose, and it's called a cactus butt by Shinzi, which is a lot of people's favorite line from the animated one. They did not do it here. I don't know why they didn't do that. Before I go even further, though, I'm just going to mention this. I don't expect these remakes to be a carbon copy of the animated one, right? I don't expect them to be a carbon copy. I mean, I don't expect them to do the same exact thing, but if you're gonna do something different, make it make sense and make it at least have emotion and humor like you do in the animated one. That's what they're not doing here. I'm not complaining that it's not carbon copy. I'm just complaining that they don't do a good job with emotion and humor here. They really don't. They took that out. So anyway, but after that, Scar has his eulogy at Pride Rock as in the animated one. But again, in the animated one, he's at least faking emotion. He's faking the heartbreak. He's and doing a very good job at it. Like he's very solemn when he makes his speech, and he is very just somber. And in the live action, I mean, he kind of does that, but then he turns into, and now I'm your king, and the hyenas will come, and they will live amongst us. At least in the animated one, it kind of builds up and he doesn't just switch to that dictator like voice. He just stays the same somber, serious voice like he did before. So I don't like that. There was no emotion in his eulogy in the live action one. None. There was none. And bothers me. The lack of emotion, the lack of humor in this movie. I'm sorry. I keep repeating it, but that's a constant theme in the live action remake. They don't do it very well. Okay. So this is something in the live action that I will actually say that kind of made me chuckle. The scene where Timon and Pumbaa find Simba in the desert and the vultures are about to get at him. And of course, it's kind of the same as in the animated one. They argue back and forth on whether to keep him or not. And of course, Pumbaa wants to keep him, but Timon does not want to keep him. But then Pumbaa convinces Timon, and Timon pretends like it was his idea all along or whatever. But I will say in the live action one, they didn't say this in the animated one, but in the live action, Pumbaa had a line where he says, "We're gonna name him Fred." That kind of made me chuckle. That was a little funny. I'll give him that. But then it follows up with a thing that makes no sense. It's a change from the animated one. In the animated one, when they decide to keep him, they take some of the watering hole and they throw water on him to wake him up. Well, in this one, he wakes up by himself. And that doesn't really make sense because he's been laying out like that in the sun for probably hours. And he's dehydrated. And so it would not make sense that he could possibly wake up by himself. He would need water splashed on him like in the animated one. So not quite sure why that change occurred because that doesn't make logical sense to me, but I digress. Okay. Oh, and um Timon in the animated one, Timon is at least a little sympathetic towards Simba when he first meets him, when Simba tells him that. I mean, yeah, he does kind of know, oh, we don't want to hear about it, but he's at least acknowledging that Simba is depressed and says it in a heartfelt kind of way. In the live action, Timon's not as sympathetic to Simba and his condition as he was in the animated one. So I didn't really like that. Okay. Sorry. We get to Hakuna Matata. One of the only thing I'm going to mention in this one, I did not like this change. Because the animated one, when Puma sang um about his farting and making animals go away. Um every time that and Timon stops him in the animated one and says, Puma, not in front of the kids. And that's a very funny, humorous moment. The live action, when he says, every time that I fart, and he says, aren't you gonna stop me? And Timon goes, no, you disgust me. Why? Why do that? I don't understand. And it's kind of like they're trying to break the fourth wall because they're referencing the animated one when they say, aren't you gonna stop me? And I guess that's what they were trying to do, and it was supposed to be funny, but that wasn't funny to me. I was trying too hard. It wasn't really funny. So oh, and by the way, the music is much better in the animated one than this one. I will say that right now. Just because I've gotten to the few of the music. Okay. And I found Timon and Pumbaa's humor in this movie a lot more dry. It was very much dry sense of humor from them than in the animated one, where they were much more funnier. So I didn't get why they were more dry in this movie, but they weren't as funny to me. And the parts that they were trying to be funny, which I'll get to a little bit later, wasn't really all that funny. Um, And then, oh, in the live action, they have actually more animals that live in the forest with Timon and Pumbaa instead of just Timon and Pumbaa, which I mean, kind of makes more sense that there would be more animals living in the woods than just Timon and Pumbaa. But they told Simba they he can't eat the animals; he has to eat bugs. Which I mean, they kind of did in the animated one, but I mean, if you're gonna put animals like antelope in the live action, I mean, Simba's a lion; he has to eat. Just saying. Doesn't really make sense. Okay. So then we okay, we have a couple changes that they made in live action. This next thing, there's a scene. We cut to the Pride Lands, and there's a scene of Scar and the hyenas. They're chasing animals. They're hunting them, I guess. And then Zazu is chased off by the hyenas, and Scar is awkwardly proposing to Sarabi. So I'm gonna talk about all of that. Because that's very much a change from the animated one. In the animated Lion King, Zazu's actually imprisoned by Scar. He's in that little bone jail, whatever you want to call it. And they have the little humorous thing of, I love a bunch of coconuts, they are standing in the road. That entire scene is so funny. And again, the humor is taken out of it. And it turns into the hyenas chasing him off. And don't come back unless you want to be eaten. I'm like, are you kidding me? Come on. Why would they do that to poor Zazu? It doesn't make sense to me. Again, the humor is not there. Um, and I don't recall the hyenas hunting animals in the animated. In fact, I recall the hyenas complaining to Scar that there was no food and no water, and that the lionesses wouldn't go hunt the animals. And in this one, Sarabi tells Scar he's over hunting, and that he's the reason why the food is not there anymore, which it's added in detail. But then Scar awkwardly proposing to Sarabi is very awkward. It's very cringy. And that was not in the animated one. In the animated one, he could care less if he got married to Sarabi. He didn't want to marry Sarabi. He was ordering her around. He didn't want anything to do with her. So not sure why they put that in there. That's a little cringe. I guess to give Scar a little bit of motivation, but it was cringy. I didn't like it. Okay, there's an extra scene where Nala leaves Pride Rock to go find him. Okay, I both kind of like this, and I'm skeptical about it though. I don't explain my reasoning. I like that it kind of gives the detail. Okay, this is Nala, because we all know that Nala went off to find help. So I kind of like that they showed her leaving Pride Rock, but then again, we're not supposed to know she's there until she starts chasing Pumbaa. So, and also, I kind of felt like this was their way of giving Beyonce more lines in the movie. Okay, this is not a dig at Beyonce. Beyonce is super talented. I like her music, just saying. But I just felt like they were just trying to give her more lines in the movie. And I don't think she was the perfect actress for Nala. I don't. I'm sorry. I know I'm gonna get crucified for saying that. Go ahead and crucify me. I don't care. I just didn't think she was great for the role. Okay. Okay. This was so unnecessary. There's a whole scene where Simba and Timon and Pumbaa are talking about the circle of life. And Simba says he was told it was a circle of life, and Timon and Pumbaa goes, "Oh no, 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 it's a line of life, a line." And they have this whole scene of so unnecessary. I keep repeating it over and over again. And their basic message is there's no connection between your actions and others. That's what Timon and Pumbaa are saying here. We all know that's not true. Your actions affect others. We all know that that is true in real life and in the movie. So, see, in this one, like Timon and Pumbaa in the animated one are at least a little bit intelligent, and they're a little wise at some points. But in this one, it's like they're not. They're not. They're kind of stupid, and they're not supposed to be dumb. They're just supposed to be like, just goofy. And they went from being goofy to kind of being dumb. So I don't get why they did that to them. I didn't like that. Okay. Can you feel the love tonight? when Nala meets Simba. Okay. Again, look, Beyonce's vocals are beautiful. I'm not ever going to deny that. I will give her that. She's a beautiful singer. But one of the things I noticed was that there was an unnecessary run in the song. Like there's a part I'm gonna demonstrate. I do not have a good singing voice, so cover your ears if you don't want to hear it. But there's a part that goes, the king I see inside. In the animated one, that's how it goes. And it's a very simple, powerful line. And in this one, Beyonce goes, the king I see inside, like that. And I'm like, okay, did she sound good doing that? Yeah, but was it necessary? No, I prefer the more simple, more powerful part of that. So I didn't really like that. But again, that's kind of just a minor complaint. Okay, and when Simba and Nala have their argument about Simba having to go back to Pride Rock to confront Scar, there's again no emotion. There's a complete lack of emotion in their argument. And the animated one, Nala at least tries to understand why Simba doesn't want to go back. She even says, what want I understand? You know, I would if you just tell me. So she does that. And in this one, she doesn't really try to understand Simba. And that's kind of out of character. And then Simba in the animated one in this argument at least shows a little concern with what's going on at Pride Rock. Because when Nala tells Simba in the animated one what Scar has done to Pride Rock, Simba's like, what? Like he kind of shows concern. And in this one, he just kind of says, well, I can't do anything about it. I like, at least show a little concern. I mean, come on. That's crazy. So I didn't really like that little see how they did it. And Nala just kind of says, I guess I made a mistake. Goodbye, Simba. Really? That's how you're going to end that scene? Not great. Okay. Then we have the scene where Rafiki comes to talk to Simba, and so has the vision of his father, whatever. Not really talk about the vision because it's kind of, I mean, it's the same. Again, there's not as much emotion as in the animated one, but probably sound like a broken record talking about that. But again, guys, that's the consistent theme in this movie, the live action movie, is the lack of emotion. But Rafiki as a character, he's not as funny as in the animated one. I mean, he's wise, which I like. I like how they made him wise. And I like, that they, I had a little bit of funny stuff, but again, he's supposed to be comic relief, like Timon and Pumbaa, like Zazu, like the hyenas. He's supposed to be kind of comic relief, and he's not really comic relief. And I don't know why they took all this humor out of the movie. I don't get that. Like I was so looking for the where he says, I know who you are. Come here. And me, and I'm like that kind of humor. Like it was so funny, and they just took that out. And I'm like, why? Why make this movie more serious than it has to be? I mean, it's a serious movie, but there's a lot of funny moments in it. So I don't know. Okay. When Simba runs back to the Pride Lands, instead of playing the song in the animated that they did with the hoo ha hey hoo ha, like the African music, and they do in the animated one, which fits so well, they play the song Spirit by Beyonce. Okay, again, this is not a personal attack on Beyonce, okay? I'm just criticizing the music they used in the scene. I don't think Spirit fit in with the scene. It was so unnecessary. It did not fit in the scene with Simba running back to the Pride Lands. This song, I feel like they said, if Beyonce's in here, let's give her a song for the movie. Well, this could have been like in the credits or something. Like put it in the credits. Like when the credits start rolling, then start playing Spirit. Um, but if they didn't want to use the music they use in the animated one for this scene, another song they could have used, which a lot of people I've read comments about this movie have said that they wanted them to use He Lives in You, which is from the Broadway show and from The Lion King too. Um, and that would have fit much better with this scene than the Spirit song. So I'm going off of what other people said too. They would have loved to do He Lives in You. So that would have fit better. I did not like the way they did Spirit. It just didn't fit the song. Okay, the scene where they distract the hyenas, while Simba and Nala and Zazu. So even Zazu in the live action doesn't change. Zazu actually knows Simba is in the Pride Lands because he's not in prison. I kind of like that, you know. I mean, it's kind of neutral for me. I still would rather he be in prison because it adds more of a comic thing, but you know, whatever. Okay, but when they distract the hyenas, um, this is a scene that actually made me laugh so hard when I first saw this movie. I'm talking about the live action one. Because the animated one, they did the hula scene, which was very funny, very hilarious. And the live action, instead of doing the hula scene, they did Be Our Guest, which I will say was very funny and a good Easter egg to Beauty and the Beast. I appreciated that. So I'll give the live action movie that. That was pretty funny. Way to add humor in there in a different way. Yay. Okay. And even when Scar tries, I'm sorry, Simba goes and confronts Scar. Scar again in the animated one is more charismatic about it. Like, Simba, I'm so glad to see you alive. And this one he's just calling Simba, see you. Like, it just, I don't understand. Not as charismatic. He tries to deny that he killed Mufasa in the live action versus the animated where he actually admitted it. In the live action, he still tried to deny, even when Simba called him out. And Sarabi was the one that called him out on his inconsistency. Because in the eulogy, he said, I couldn't get to the gorge quick enough. And then he said, I saw the look in Mufasa's eyes. Sarabi says, well, how could you see that? So I guess it's a minor difference. I don't know. They find out. So then the battle ensues. There's a big battle, and it's very entertaining, the battle. And then Simba confronts Scar for the final battle between him and Scar. And again, there's a lack of oomph, of impact. It's not as dramatic. It's not as emotional. It's just kind of like fight, fight, boom. And then when the hyenas confront Scar about calling them the enemy, again, he just tries to just go, oh, we can work together, rebuild our army, instead of saying, oh, my friends, like he does in the animated. Again, I don't know. So, and then of course, the movie ends with, like in the animated, with Simba going on to Pride Rock, roaring and bringing Green back to the Pride Lands, and him and Nala having their own camp. So, overall, what did I think? Is the live action Lion King a Disney do or a Disney don't? It is definitely for me a Disney don't. Sorry. And a big part of it, I know I sounded like a broken record with these two in this review, but it's true. The main part why the Disney don't for me, the lack of emotion and the lack of humor. It was so blatant in this movie. Again, I don't expect it to be a carbon copy because you saw my review for the Jungle Book. I praised the Jungle Book for not being a carbon copy because they did different things with the movie, but they added stuff from Rudyard Kipling's book and they made the movie interesting. So I praised the Jungle Book remake for not being a carbon copy. So I'm not expecting it to be a carbon copy, but I expected you to be emotional and impactful and humorous and dramatic. And it had none of that. It had a few little things where there was a little emotion here and there and a little humor here and there, but it wasn't enough to live up to the animated one. It just fell flat, fell very flat for me. So, and I did not like what they did with most of the characters in this movie. Um, Except I'm a little neutral about Zazu. Zazu was kind of the same, so I guess. Um, but yeah, overall, live action Lion King, Disney don't. Okay, so that concludes this movie review. And so this actually concludes my series of the Disney animated versus live action reviews. Um, so for my next coming reviews, I'm going to do something a little something different. Um, and I will tell you about that after I make this one final remark. So since I'm gonna end the Disney animated and live action comparison review series, I'm going to rank the 4 live action movies that I compared to the animated one. So that was The Jungle Book, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and Lion King. So I'm gonna rank the live action. These are the live action remakes from best to worst. The best live action remake out of these 4 is The Jungle Book, definitely. Jungle Book was the most creative. They had more of a storyline, and they added things in that made sense, and they benefited the plot. So, Jungle Book, number best remake out of the 4. Second one for me, Beauty and the Beast was the second best for me, just because they added in the backstory of Belle's mother and the Beast backstory, and yeah, I appreciated that. And number 3, second worst live action remake out of the 4 was Aladdin. Just because Aladdin was just all over the place to me with the live action one. So yeah. And the worst live action remake out of these 4 was The Lion King. Definitely the worst one. No humor, no emotion, no impactfulness, none of that. So okay, so let me talk about what I'm going to do next. So, as you guys probably know, the new Jurassic World is coming out. Well, actually, it came out in theaters actually already. So, I am going to see that. And I want to do a review of that because I love the Jurassic Park series. I love the Jurassic World series. So what I'm going to do for that is next week, I will watch the first and second Jurassic World, and I will do a review on both those movies in one video. Not really a comparison, more just like talking about them. And then that following weekend, I'm going to be in Texas with my friend, and we're going to go see Jurassic World, the new one. And then I will post a review the following week on the new Jurassic World. So I'm very much looking forward to doing that for you guys. So if you guys like this video, comment down below, subscribe, tell me give me suggestions of what movies you want me to review next, and I will see you guys next time. Goodbye.